August 25, 2008, 3 automobiles, including a blue Jeep Cherokee, entered the residential neighborhood of West 70th and Main Streets at 5:30 p.m. The cars made a U-turn one after the other and came to a stop on 70th Street, near approximately 20 people who were outside, including D. Smith, her friend Cassandra Rankins, Grisby, who had been walking in the neighborhood pushing his 6-year-old brother Moore in a toy car, and L. Smith, Grisby's stepfather, who had been working on his car. Defendant emerged from one of the vehicles holding an M11 semi-automatic rifle. Defendant looked around as though searching for someone, and then pointed the gun, holding it in both hands. D. Smith, Rankins, Grisby, Moore and others ran for cover. As she ran, D. Smith heard more than 20 gunshots fired in rapid succession. Rankins heard about 40 shots. When the shooting ceased and the cars left the scene, D. Smith, Grisby, and Moore each had a bullet wound and L. Smith was dead from multiple gunshot wounds. D. Smith and Rankins both identified defendant's photograph in a photographic lineup for investigating officers, and identified defendant in court as the shooter. D. Smith also noticed that the shooter had a tattoo on his arm. Defendant had a $sign tattoo on his arm. D. Smith was also shown a photograph of Daron Jones. She did not recognize him, but knew that he was not the shooter. Firearms expert William Moore testified that the bullet casings recovered by the police at the scene suggested that 2 weapons had been fired that day, the M11 rifle and a .40 caliber pistol. The shooting occurred in the territory claimed by the East Coast Crip gang, East Coast. Defendant was an active member of the Grape Street Crip gang, Grape Street. Several Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, officers testified that defendant had admitted his membership in the gang to them. In 2005, defendant admitted to Officer Oscar Villarreal that he was a member of Grape Street and was known by the moniker Goopy. In 2006, while he was in the company of Kedjuan Bullard, the brother of the Grape Street leader Brandon Bullard, defendant admitted his membership in Grape Street to Officer Daniel Pierce. In 2007, defendant admitted his gang membership to Officer Rafael Lomeli. In 2008, defendant admitted his gang membership to Officer Anthony Aries. When Los Angeles County Deputy Sheriff Robin Russell arrested defendant after stopping the blue Jeep Cherokee he was riding in, defendant admitted that he was a member of Grape Street. Finally, Officer Ivan McMillan testified that defendant had admitted to him that defendant was an active member of the gang. Approximately 8 months before the subject shooting, Bullard was shot to death. Bullard was a prominent member of Grape Street, a leader of a subset at one time, and greatly respected within the gang as well as by rival gangs. The investigating officer in that homicide, Detective Megan Aguilar, testified that she identified an East Coast member as the suspected killer, but no charges had been filed. LAPD officer Samuel Marullo testified as a gang expert with experience investigating both East Coast and Grape Street. Officer Marullo had known Bullard for at least 5 years before his death. Officer Marullo had spoken to the officers who investigated Bullard's murder, including Detective Aguilar, from whom he learned that the suspect in the Bullard murder was Stephen Hammond, a known member of East Coast. In Officer Marullo's expert opinion, Bullard's murder precipitated a feud between former allies East Coast and Grape Street. Since then, East Coast members had been convicted of shooting 2 Grape Street members, killing 1. The feud was ongoing at the time of the subject shooting, which Officer Marullo explained was because Bullard was a beloved leader and it would be disrespectful to settle the feud quickly. Officer Justin Kite testified that on October 3, 2008, when he and his partner were patrolling in the Jordan Downs housing development, territory claimed by Grape Street, he saw Ricky Hansi, on the sidewalk with a rifle in his hands. Hansi ran, and when the officers pursued him, he threw the rifle under a parked car. Later Hansi was identified as a Grape Street member, and the rifle is the same M11 rifle used by defendant in this case. The prosecution's other gang expert, Officer McMillan, testified that Grape Street is a criminal street gang with several subsets, a common symbol and color, and approximately 2,400 to 3,000 members. The primary activities of Grape Street are murder, attempted murder, drive-by shootings, robbery, assault with deadly weapons, illegal possession of firearms, narcotic sales and transfers, and burglary. Officer McMillan testified that a member who committed crimes for the gang would enhance both the gang's financial status and the member's own status within the gang. Gang members earned the respect and recognition of leaders, which enhanced their chances of being elevated within the gang, by committing crimes that instilled fear in the community. Officer McMillan explained that respect was very, very important, probably the most important aspect of being a gang member. Respect was particularly important for the Grape Street gang. He testified that a gang war was ongoing between East Coast and Grape Street. Given a hypothetical that tracked the facts of the West 70th Street shooting, Officer McMillan opined that the shooting was committed for the benefit of Grape Street, as it was clearly a retaliatory shooting for Bullard's murder. Shooting at people in an East Coast stronghold such as West 70th Street, benefited Grape Street by promoting the gang and instilling fear in the area. It did not matter whether the victims were gang members because the residents in that area would know that it was a retaliatory shooting. When committing such a crime, gang members might call out the name of their gang, but did so less nowadays, to avoid giving evidence to the police. Officer McMillan testified that it was not unusual for gang members to ride in several cars to attend a shooting. Often the group includes a shot caller, crew chief, or captain, to verify that the particular soldier or young member committed the crime. Officer McMillan also testified that larger gangs kept what was known as a hood gun to pass from member to member as needed to commit a crime, because firearms were currently more difficult to obtain.